Here's Gilgeous-Alexander. McCollum staying with him. Spins, gets inside. Left-handed off the glass. Oh, what a sweet move.
Giddey, tough spot. Backdoor. What a pass. What a play. And J-Dub picks the pocket of Trae Young. He'll take it himself.
This is Udart. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, and welcome to the Uncontested podcast, coming to you Wednesday, May 29th, the last podcast of the month before the NBA draft. So that's exciting, and the NBA finals, but the Thunder aren't in there, so who cares? I'm your host for the evening, Jacob Niffen. We are brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network and the best fast casual food in OKC, Dave's Hot Chicken and Spark OKC. I've got some of my normal co-hosts with me tonight, JD Silva and Taylor Peterson, but more importantly than those two, we have a special guest joining us tonight. He is formerly with Hoops Hype. You can now find his stuff for free on YouTube. He is the cap expert, Yossi Gozlan. He's on Twitter at Yossi Gozlan and YouTube, Yossi Gozlan NBA. Yossi, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to join us.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
We are, I think, equally very excited because it's a big summer for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, they get bounced in the second round of the NBA playoffs, but nobody expected them to probably be there back at the beginning of the year anyways. Now they are set up for possibly a monster summer heading into the first season of high expectations for this team in quite some time. Yossi, can you start off just giving us as condensed of a version as you can, what the Thunder's cap situation and team building situation looks like coming into the summer of 2024?
So they basically have a 2-year window, either this offseason or the next, to use a bunch of cap space. And, last offseason, they did have cap space for the first time in a while. They just used it to take some bad contracts and get more draft picks. And now, after the success they had, there's an expectation that they'll actually use it to add another piece. So they have really until if they don't find anyone this offseason, they could roll over the cap space to the next one, because Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams are still making their rookie deals. Until those guys get paid, they are going to have a lot of flexibility to do something big and add to the core.
That was very concise. I appreciate that. JD, Taylor, follow-ups.
I guess there's so much we can talk about in regards to the cap space and what the Thunder may or may not do. I think I have a question that's been asked a lot, and maybe this can intro us into the rest of these questions. There has been a discussion about, so obviously we assume Chet and J-Dub will be offered, max contract extensions when they're eligible for that. And we know the NBA salary aprons and things like that, those rules have changed recently. There's been discussions on, well, can the Thunder even maintain and hold 3 max players on the same team? Will it be just those 3 guys and no one else? Are you able to dispel or not whether that is true? Like, will this team be able to hold together a core like this for the long term?
I think it's possible, and it might even be possible they could add like another near max player on top of that, because you got to look at the percentage of the cap when you're looking at these max contracts, because there's 3 different max contracts. Chet and Jalen would presumably get the cheaper version of the 25%, and then Shea will eventually get the 35%, but he still has 3 years left on this deal, which is a 25%. So when you have 3, it's not like the Suns who have 3 max players all making 35% of the cap, $50 million each. You got guys if they're making less than that. So you could still have some more mid-salary players like Lou Dort, potentially Isaiah Joe. And as far as the apron rule, like the whole sustainability thing is, how much are they willing to spend? Are they willing to spend a lot of money in the tax, which the Thunder have done before in the 2 Paul George years? They spent a lot of luxury tax. They had, like, at the time, the largest payment in history. And then the other thing is, do they really care about the draft pick penalties? You can get your draft pick 7 years out frozen, you can't trade it, and then, if you're over the second apron again, then you, get that pick dropped to the end of the first round. But the Thunder have so many draft picks, it might not impact them quite as much as a normal team would. Um, so I think the Thunder are more well equipped just based on their spending history and how many extra draft picks they have to maybe sustain this core for a really long time, like maybe past the 2020s.
Yossi, follow-up question on that real quick. You mentioned the stipulations on the draft picks, 7 years out if you're in that second apron. You said that first year you're in the second apron, your pick 7 years out gets frozen, meaning you can't trade it. The second year in the apron, that pick then drops down to like the last pick in the draft, like pick number 30. Does that just apply to their own draft picks? Because the Thunder own basically every draft pick for the rest of eternity. So that the Denver pick in 7 years that they own, like, is that affected by this at all?
Just their own pick.
Wow. Okay. So maybe there's a reason why Presti
7 years out. They make it 7 years out because that way you can't trade it. So it'll already have been impacted before you can even potentially trade it.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Okay.
Interesting. So Yossi, you mentioned actually you dropped a really great YouTube breakdown on the Thunder's cap space moving forward and some of the things that they could potentially do. We want your overall thoughts here at the end of the podcast on what you would prefer or think the Thunder should do with that cap space, but kind of to start to get into some specifics. There's two role players who really emerged for the Thunder over the past couple of seasons, Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. It's not necessarily that they're up for contract extensions, but those current options, team options, could be declined. They could be signed to new long-term contracts. Those two players are Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. So what are your thoughts on what the Thunder should do with those two players, maybe how much they can pay them, and then what would be the benefit of doing so this offseason?
So I think they'll definitely take care of Isaiah Joe. I think they might. So both Aaron Wiggins, I'm guessing probably too. He's been pretty good. But I think definitely for sure Isaiah Joe, he's definitely more of a priority. I think that there's a good chance both guys are making more money than they're currently listed as. So what they could do is decline their team options, make them free agents. I think they'd both be restricted, and then they can use their cap space, use their 30 million or so in cap space, and then once they're done spending it, they can re-sign these guys to much higher starting salaries. So the idea is, okay, you're paying it forward now. You're giving them a raise, much more money this season than they otherwise would have gotten. But now you've got them locked into these, however much it is that they want. Maybe you're getting a break on the annual salary over the next 3 to 4 years. So now they're on a good rate, which makes it easier to keep them once the team starts to get more expensive, once they pay Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams and presumably bring in another guy.
Perfect. So on those two possible, the Thunder can decline the team option, let those guys become free agents, re-sign them. Is there a limit to how much money they can sign Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins to? That's question number one. Question number two is, what is the order of operations here? Like, do they have to sign Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe with the $33 million of cap space, or can they go spend all $33 million and then sign those guys to new contracts once they've hit the cap?
So I'll start with the order of operations first. So like I mentioned, they're both making minimum salaries right now. If they decline their team options, they're going to have these cap holds, which is basically a placeholder salary that interferes with their cap space. But it's going to be for the minimum. It's going to be like the same amount. So they basically still going to have the same amount of cap space. So what they can do is spend that cap space first, and then they get to the salary cap line. Now they could re-sign these guys because they still have their free agent rights. As far as what they can get, Wiggins has full bird. Yeah, he's got full bird rights, so they can really pay him up to whatever he wants. Isaiah Joe has early bird rights. In my OKC video, I talked about what is the maximum he can get that roughly projected at. I don't think he'll get quite that much, but I think it starts around 12 million and maybe like 4 for 58. Maybe I don't remember, but something like that. So I'm sure, maybe he could have a market for that considering how well he shot, but he's also restricted, so it's going to tamper his market. I think the Thunder will, if you can just try to get it for a little less than that, that's definitely a win.
I know Nick thinks Isaiah Joe is going to get paid more than Lou makes now. Like he's been cautious, I guess, pushing back, tampering expectations a bit on how much Isaiah Joe could potentially make. I think is 20 million the number that Nick throws out sometimes as a team could offer him that?
I think that's Nick's number is 20 for Isaiah.
Yeah. Do you think that's Yossi? Do you think that's realistic? I'm thinking because Lou Dort makes 16-ish,
16, 17, yeah, right around there.
Yeah. So a big discussion point for us has been like, well, should he make more than Lou Dort, and will that make sense long term, and things like that.
If he makes it to unrestricted free agency next year, which means OKC didn't extend him or decline and resign him, then maybe there could definitely. But now, especially because the Thunder have they have the leverage just because he's restricted. So now they could give him like a good enough raise where they can hopefully lock him in, but they can't even go that high if they wanted to. Unless they use their cap space on him, then they could go much higher, but they'd have to really strike out on all opportunities. Like maybe can you give him a first year salary, 20 million, and decline from there? Maybe, but I don't think they want to go that high.
Yossi, there's a lot of talk about Josh Giddey, his fit on this team. There's a lot of discourse surrounding that. We heard Sam Presti talk a lot about that in his exit interview for the season here yesterday, I believe. But he is due for a contract extension. Doesn't necessarily have to happen this summer. It can happen a year from now. Maybe we'll have you back on and be talking about that. But what does a Giddey extension look like in your opinion? And how would that affect the Thunder's future flexibility?
I honestly haven't even thought of it. I'm just so convinced it's not happening. I could be wrong. I think the first thing that comes to mind is not that they're similar players, but I think when you look at where this player was before the start of this season, you can kind of see some parallels, which is Deni Avdija. Season he was a most improved player candidate. He really stepped up, and now I think he's a guy that a lot of teams could really try to trade for. I think he might get traded for like a pretty surprising package. He'd be one of the best available wings on the market. But before coming into the season, just a lot of questions about like what kind of player he is and what is he going to develop into. A lot of uncertainty. So Giddey is flawed in many ways as well. So I could see the Thunder, if he's willing to accept basically what Deni Avdija accepted, which was the full mid-level exception, like $15 or so million a year, which seems pretty low for a draft pick as high as Giddey, then I think they would want to take advantage of that. But I would guess that he's going to want more, and they're not going to want to commit to something that, something quite that large.
Whenever Taylor asked you that question, your first response was, "Oh God." That's kind of what our first thoughts have been too. So,
but not only that, you compared him to Deni, and our guy Jacob's been a big proponent.
I am convinced that Deni Avdija is the missing piece on the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I would love that for you guys.
It makes too much sense for me.
And you've got enough picks to do it.
Yep.
Right.
So let's go down the rabbit hole then, Yossi. What do you think a package for Deni looks like?
I suppose, you can take, first of all, do you need to send the player back? Like, do they want Josh Giddey? I could see the Wizards wanting him. You can they could really plug him in at any position between the 1 and 3 right now. And it could just be like another low value get for them. Maybe they try to lock him into a good value contract like they did with Denny and Kuzma, and then potentially raise his value in the future. But so that's number one. Does Giddey have to be included? And if yeah, maybe that's kind of a fair swap. Otherwise, maybe you got to trade 2 firsts. I don't know what the quality of the firsts are, but considering he's one of the best wings available, gettable wings on the market, I don't think there's going to be a lot of available wing players on the market. I would guess it's one of those 2 types of packages.
That makes sense. So that leads into the next question here. The Thunder will have this $33 million in cap space. They could go sign a player. Most recently, I think it was someone with Clutch Points said that the Thunder could be like the dark horse to go try to steal OG Anunoby away from the New York Knicks. Yossi, the biggest free agent the Thunder have ever signed from another team in franchise history, not going back to Seattle, just in Oklahoma City, is Patrick Patterson, right? So this is not a team that dips their foot in the free agency waters much at all. Last year, they had a ton of cap space, and we saw what they did with it. They leveraged it and used it as a tool to go collect more assets. Move up from 12 to 10 in the draft, collect Victor Oladipo to get a couple of seconds, et cetera, et cetera. Let's assume that the Thunder are not going to go out and spend that money on an impact player in the free agency market. I don't even know who it would be. Honestly, that kind of matches the team and the age and the style. Their other option is to use it to absorb players in a trade. Are there players, you just mentioned there's probably not going to be a lot of wings available, and what the Thunder need is arguably a big wing who can play the 4, who can help rebound, who can stretch the floor. Well, shocker, that's all 30 teams in the NBA want that player. Are there any players that jump out to you that A, may be available for the right price, and B, that you think would fit with this Oklahoma City Thunder team, that if they wanted to go do the, I don't know, Josh Giddey, Ousmane Dieng, and 4 first-round picks trade for, they could go get that guy? Is there somebody out there that catches your interest, that checks all those boxes?
I think we already mentioned him, Denny Avdia. I really feel like he might be.
Folks, I did not pay Yossi to come on the show, I promise.
I think he might be the best of actually available wing, because there's so many wings that you can list off that would be a good fit, and like probably even their team should make them available. Guys like Jeremy Grant, there's a bunch of guys, and it's like, and I don't even know if they're going to be available. Teams want to be good, and you need these types of players to be good. So I think the Wizards, for sure, their guys are open for business. As far as Kuzma, Avdia, I like Avdia there a lot more. My pipe dream scenario is Lauri Markkanen, which, look, the Thunder have enough assets to trade for just about anybody. And in my video, I made a really fun scenario of how they can trade for him now and lock him up mid-season with an extension. And yeah, I mean, but that is, why would the Jazz trade him right now? They don't have any other cornerstone. So I don't know, unless the market changes. It just seems like a lot of these players that the Thunder theoretically need aren't going to be available, which is why I wouldn't be too surprised if they just end up using their cap space, doing exactly what they did last offseason, just taking more bad contracts and picks.
Davis Bertans.
Like, do they want John Collins? I don't think that's a great fit for the Thunder. I'm sure he's available. DeAndre Hunter? I don't think he's a great fit there. So, like, Keldon Johnson, I don't think he helps that much. Just some of the guys that are actually gettable, I don't think they're really threading the needle for the Thunder.
So we want the listeners to obviously go and watch your video, because there's a ton of great content on there. But do you mind breaking down that specific scenario of Lauri Markkanen that you mentioned in your video?
Yeah, I mean, Lauri Markkanen, I think, might be the best potential fit the Thunder could get. Obviously, there are players that you can argue would be better basketball fits, but the whole situation regarding his contract and what they can do with it, it's not only a great basketball fit, but it's actually something that can work long term with their impending finances. So my whole scenario is this: trade Josh Giddey and however many picks for Lauri Markkanen. They'll still have a ton of cap space left over, and then just spend some of it to re-sign Isaiah Joe right now. So you give him his raise, lock him up, and then you have a certain amount of cap space. I think it's 14 million. That's the most teams are allowed to carry into next season. During the regular season, you can't carry more than that anymore. They changed the rules. Then 6 months after the trade, you can extend him to the maximum they could potentially possibly give him. So you're going to give him an extension, but you're also using your cap space to increase his current salary. He's going to be eligible for that this summer, where they can spend cap space to increase his current salary from 18 million plus whatever cap space they have, 14 million. And then they can extend off of that. So you're basically giving him over $200 million in new money, but most of it is subsidized in this upcoming season. So you get a little bit of a break on the later years. And it'd be like, if it might be their best chance at getting a guy like Lauri Markkanen, because if he hits free agency, they won't have enough. They wouldn't be able to. They won't have enough cap space to top what the Jazz can offer him with their bird rights, but or whatever other team can offer him. So if you can trade for him now and then give him the raise now as soon as possible, then you can get him on an extension that's pretty equal numbers wise to what a max contract he could sign next summer.
I think we're speaking a lot of Thunder fans' language there.
Yeah,
I think you got people fired up. Get ready to get aggregated, buddy.
I was surprised at the reception of this video that I did. I thought it's an extremely complicated thing, and I thought people were going to get lost, and I don't know, people loved it.
That's awesome.
People love
Sorry,
it.
JD, I think I cut you off.
No, it's all good. The Lauri conversation has always been interesting for us because we're in kind of the Thunder echo chamber, and we're like, Sam Presti always preaches patience and wait and do things slowly and grow organically and things like that. But then the other side is, well, this team is already very good, and if you can add someone like Lauri, maybe you should do it. I think the concerns from someone like me that does not know a tenth of the amount of like cap knowledge that is how long theoretically would it be a concern long term keeping that group together? Would there be a perceived like casualty in the future of if you trade for a Lauri that's on a max, and then you want to keep J-Dub and SGA and Chet together long term as well? What does that look like long term? This is kind of circling back to the question that opened us up here.
So I ran a projection. I'm just going to pull it up on my end, which I showed in the video. Normally, I don't project 2 years ahead, but since Chet and Jalen would be making their new contract, I really wanted to see how this would work. And now projecting the salary cap is a little easier than in the past because it's capped at 10% raises, and the new TV deal is going to ensure that it reaches those 10% raises. So it's much easier to project. But when I looked at it, like the Thunder 3 years from now, or 2 years from now, heading into 2026-27 season, they could conceivably field this roster that has Shea, Chet, Jalen all making close to $40 million a year, and Lauri making around $50 million a year, and they're still paying Dort 17 mil. They're still paying Joe, around the mid-level, whatever it takes to keep them, and they still have like a full roster. So they'd have a pretty big tax payment, but it's not. That's really the thing. Like, do they want? How much are they willing to spend? And I just feel pretty confident that just based on their history that they are willing to spend. I think people are. I feel like some Thunder fans are still pretty. What's the word? Like, I guess. Like scarred by the whole James Harden thing that they
Thunder 1.0. Yeah,
you don't say.
$5 million, but listen, he learned from ownership, learned from that, and they spent a lot of money. So I just feel pretty confident they'll be able to have this expensive and deep roster, and they'll be able to sustain it. I wouldn't be surprised if they get this fourth max-ish player and they're able to keep this team together through like 2030. I think it's possible.
So Yossi, we've asked you a lot of specific questions about what the Thunder could do with this cap space that they have coming up this offseason as well as into the next offseason. But maybe just give us your overall thoughts, maybe even your preference on what you feel the Thunder should do with their open cap space this offseason and moving forward before those contract extensions that we mentioned hit here in two seasons.
So I think they just shouldn't make a bad deal. They shouldn't trade for someone they're not totally in love with. They need to get the right guy. So if, as far as getting that additional front court cornerstone that everyone's kind of penciling in that they should target, they need to take their time on that. If they can get a guy like Lauri Markkanen, boom, okay, just take him in. Otherwise, if none of those players that you really like are available, which there's a very good chance that happens, then just look for a short-term solution. Just try to get a front court player. He can be someone that is only under contract for the next 2 years. So you have these 2 years to see if he's going to be a long-term fit. Otherwise, he expires right before Chet and Jalen get their big contracts, which means that if that happens, then they, it doesn't have to be an expensive player, but it's also they might not even need that much cap space to do it. So maybe they also just continue accumulating assets. Maybe they use some of that cap space to just get some more draft picks for this offseason. Just knowing that there's technically no rush, because maybe next offseason the market will be better. Maybe they're going to be those players that you want actually available. So I think they just need they have the luxury of time to get that cornerstone at the 4. They just shouldn't rush into it.
I love that. And like you mentioned earlier with the whole draft pick scenario and the second apron, like I think the writing is kind of on the wall on how the Thunder plan to supplement this roster with role players moving forward, which is continue to bring in cheap young talent on other teams' draft picks. I mean, you look at what Cason Wallace did this season for the Thunder, played the 6th most minutes on the team as a first-year, 20-year-old rookie. I think that's kind of their plan moving forward, is to continue to leverage those assets to fill out the roster around those large contracts. So, Yossi, before we let you go, please plug where people can find all of your work, where they can follow you on social media, especially with the calendar about to turn to June. We're getting to draft season and then free agent season. So you guys will definitely be wanting to follow all of Yossi's work. So Yossi, the floor is yours.
So I now have my new YouTube channel where I'm talking about the salary cap and NBA. And right now I'm doing videos on specific teams I'm interested in talking about. So you can subscribe to that at Yossi Gozlan NBA. You can follow me on Twitter at Yossi Gozlan. I will tweet about same also NBA salary cap stuff. And usually when transactions happen, I'll react to it and give a quick analysis. So that'll be especially useful as we get closer to the off season. And also I have my cap sheets on my website, capsheets.com. If you wanted to see exactly where your favorite team is heading into next season, you can see the Thunder's exact cap space projection, and when moves happen, I update them instantly. So you could see how, if they spend some cap space, you'll be able to know how much they've got left in real time as it's happening.
Awesome.
Hey, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening, Yossi. We really appreciate it. And I know I learned some stuff in this, so I'm sure that our listeners did as well. And then definitely JD as well, because he doesn't know much of anything. So
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Yossi, appreciate the time, man.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, we're going to cut to break. And when we get back, it'll be time for our Sparks of the Week. We'll be right back. And we are back. JD, take it away.
Yes. Spark Joy at Oklahoma's family-friendly joint Spark, located in Scissortail Park, recently opened in Chisholm Creek and opening mid-June in Nichols Hills. Dive into their menu of burgers, bites, and cold delights. Don't skip the must-try BLC burger, pink fries, frozen peach club special, and rotating custard flavor of the month. You can't forget to mention their newest menu item, Rumble Fries. This tray of loaded fries are perfect to share for the whole table, named after none other than Rumble the Bison himself. Now it's time for the Spark of the Week.
What do you guys got?
You guys go first. Taylor, what do you got?
Man, if I'm going first, I have to start with the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to say that for you guys. I'm going to go with none other than cornerstone superstar of the franchise, of the organization, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. His trainer, actually, I was DMing with him last year. He deactivated. He's back now. So we need to try and get him on the podcast. That being said, he posted a story of Shai back in the lab, back in Canada already, putting the work in. I'm not sure if there's anything that can get you more excited as a Thunder fan than knowing your superstar is not even 2 weeks from being eliminated from the playoffs. He's already putting that work in, trying to get better. So my spark of the week is our superstar, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
I love it. My spark of the week is a spark because this person lit a fire. They hit the spark, lit the fire, and set Thunder Twitter ablaze. I would like to give a shout out to one Robin Hayward.
A very beautiful human.
With some very hot takes on the internet, with the whole saga of her husband Gordon playing with the Thunder and perceived lack of opportunity. Robin took her complaints to the internet, which is where I go with my complaints, and it may have backfired, but hey, she had time. So
she had time today. That's right.
She had time. Did she tweet that Gordon said it wouldn't be a good idea?
All Instagram. But yes.
Instagram, yes. Okay. So that means Sam just did this for the cap flexibility primarily. If that is true and he ignored that recommendation, right?
Primarily.
Could
I
be.
think he hoped that the on-fit court, just like we did, would come along and Gordon would buy in. And it's not to say that Gordon didn't buy in, but maybe we'll save that for our next segment. We dive into some of the Presti exit interview quotes.
Okay, it's me. I don't have a basketball-related one because basketball is just kind of in a nebulous state for Thunder fans right now, and a lot going on. So we had the long weekend. I watched 4 movies. One of them, Furiosa. It's awesome. But then I don't know why this happened. I never get this much free time. So I watched the 3 Planet of the Apes movies.
Heck yeah.
Rise. I was like, oh shit, this is good. And then I watched Dawn and I was like, this is one of the best action movies I've seen in a long time. And then I watched War, which was just also great, but pretty depressing mostly. But yeah, apes strong together.
I love it. Before we talk about Presti's press conference, I need to throw this back up. If you missed the show on Sunday with Nick and I and Eric Pincus, we announced that we are collecting money for a charity for Safe Haven Animal Rescue in OKC. This was born out of our season predictions, where each game that we predicted that ended up being a loss, or we got it wrong. We had to donate $1 to a charity of the fans' choice. The fans voted, chose Safe Haven Animal Rescue. The 5 of us owe a total of $156. Nick has said he will match the $156, which is awesome. Shout out to Nick. We also asked the fans to match the $156, and then we said, you know what, screw that. Let's just blow it out of the water. And that is what you guys have done. I'm totaling up the money here right now for you. Alexander sent 20. Mark sent 20. Cooper sent 50. Craig, 1952. It's a very specific amount. I'm not sure why. Luke sent nearly $10. Jeff sent 55. LaRonda sent 10, Andrew 15, Michelle $98. So
Awesome.
tons of people sending a lot of money over. That's a total of almost $300 that we've made for this drive so far.
We had
so
somebody who sent a dollar amount for every Thunder win, correct?
Yes, which was really cool. So
That's awesome.
if you are interested in chipping in, we have the QR codes up here on the YouTube screen for PayPal and Venmo. If you are listening to the podcast version and not watching a screen, the Venmo is at the Uncontested, and the PayPal email is theuncontestedsports@gmail.com. JD, we want to go to the next break before we talk Sam Presti?
Yes, let's do that.
All right, we will be right back. And we are back. Sam Presti spoke for 2.5 hours
Correct.
to the
2.5
local
hours.
media. Tuesday started in morning, ended in afternoon from like 11 to like 1:30. Talked for forever.
He spoke for longer than any of those 3 Planet of the Apes movies were.
That's incredible. We don't really have like a layout of how we're going to talk about this. We're just going to talk about Sam Presti quotes. Anything quote, topic, theme jump out to you guys?
I'll start us off just with the fact that we become so accustomed to those 2-hour Presti exit interviews, which we really appreciate as fans. Thunder Media appreciates them as well, especially when you compare it to other organizations across the league. It's really special what he does, and I think we really need to take time to appreciate that. Presti mentions it's an opportunity to kind of give back to fans and give his thoughts and communicate them to the fans, and I really appreciate it as a fan. But we've become so accustomed to Sam going on these like 30-minute intro rants for each season over the past couple of years. This year, it was like less than 5 minutes. Maybe it was only a couple minutes. And at the end of his exit interview, he mentioned he did that on purpose because he wanted to get to every single question that the Thunder media in that room had, and then kind of concluded his remarks with a shout out to the fans, which I thought was really special. So I don't have a specific quote as much as I just thought that was so cool. Presti not only learning from his previous exit interview availability, but also just really using that opportunity to give back to Thunder Media and the fandom.
Yeah, Presti has just, I really like listening to the guy talk. He's just very like eloquent and has the friendly businessman GM speak and like jargon down like no one I've ever heard listen to before, where like our friend Matt posted this. This is a quote from Presti. They're going to work as fast as they can, but as slow as they have to. That's just, there are so many Presti-isms, and that sums up almost all of them. Is there's some form of that. He's kind of not saying, he's saying something that sounds, inspiring and like they're headed in the right direction, but ultimately doesn't tell us anything specific. That's kind of like the Presti brand. And you know what? It's worked. It's worked to this point. I could not sit through all 2.5 hours, so I'm grateful for the highlights of that. But I don't know if I don't know how much I take away from it. I did get a kick out of the Gordon Hayward quote where he said, well, at least we got him to bark. Like that
was good.
I didn't know how much I should read into that. Like, was that like saying, oh yeah, he had fun, he barked, or was that like we couldn't get him to do anything else?
I
But
don't
at
think
least
that
he
was
did
his
that.
intention. Here's the thing with Sam Presti exit interviews. I love Sam Presti to death. I think a lot of fans go in hoping to get little Easter eggs of what's going to happen. The dude's not spilling the beans, guys.
No.
He talks a lot and says very little.
Very articulate.
Yes. I remember the summer of 2017. Was it 2017 or was it the summer of 2018? It had to be 2017.
It's 2017.
When he said this will be the summer of internal development with guys like Domantas Sabonis and Victor Oladipo. And you know what happened a few weeks after that?
They traded
those guys for Paul George. I'm not saying that's like what's going to happen. That's the exception, not the rule. But Sam wasn't going to come in and say, we plan on signing Josh Giddey to this extension and we're going to try to sign these players in free agency, and we're going to try to make this trade. A, because they don't know any of that stuff yet. And B, if he did, he would never tell you. Right? Like, do they have a board of trade targets they'd like to go after and free agent targets they'd like to go after, and have already started discussions on if they're going to extend Josh Giddey and what that number is like and what those negotiations will look like with his agent? Of course. But you can't talk to free agents yet. And trades will not materialize, and the trade market ebbs and flows until we get to the draft. So I don't think we were ever going to learn much of anything from this, although he did say some really cool stuff. Maybe some things we did learn, Taylor. They plan on giving Shea the bag.
That's right. But what I really appreciated from Sam with that comment is he said, yeah, Shea deserved it. We need to make sure I keep saying organization, but they have to be in the position to be able to not only give him that deserved extension, but also make sure it doesn't handicap the rest of the team around him, and that other players still are able to get their extensions as well. And what he's obviously alluding to, he's alluding to a lot there, but you can think about
they're cheap.
Yeah, that's right. But he's talking about the Chet and Dub extensions coming up in 2 years, like we talked so much about with Yossi and with Eric on Sunday's podcast. I love the context that he brought to that. Instead of just saying, yeah, Shea's our franchise cornerstone, and we're going to give him that extension. One other thing, Jacob, you mentioned Sam. I mean, I think an overall theme that I took away as well is, like, you mentioned Sam saying a lot without saying too much. And I think there's a lot of things that fans could take away depending on what they want. So if you want Sam Presti to make a trade, you could take some quotes from that presser, that availability, and be excited about that. If you really want Sam to extend Josh Giddey and keep him around the team, there's comments for that as well. All of the above. But you mentioned something about, Sam not giving up, like his master plan, his blueprint. And he mentioned that kind of specifically. He said, I like to think we're always aggressive. Some people may conflate action with aggressiveness, but he says that no things are bound to any one way. They are not bound to doing things a specific way. He also said we'll make some pretty big decisions. He mentioned, certain trades and maybe free agent acquisitions and how those go through a decision filter that they have in place. So just because the Thunder aren't doing things or didn't do things at the trade deadline doesn't mean they're not exploring other opportunities. I found that interesting as well, because that still leaves the window open for them doing something this offseason.
Definitely.
What do you think the decision filter looks like? Is it like they just put
like a giant funnel?
Yeah,
in the middle of the practice court.
Just like yell at one end of the funnel, and then if it comes out the other end of the guy listening to it, then it's good to go. It's like a long game of telephone.
One of my favorite quotes is at the end of the availability. First, I knew we were coming to the end of the media availability when Sam Presti went on a 5-minute goose chase about Lyndon B. Johnson at the NASA Space Center and talking to a janitor. And I was like, if we're talking Lyndon B. Johnson and NASA, we're about to wrap this bitch up. Yeah. And he did about 20 minutes later.
It was a great analogy.
He said, we need a coach that loves players, not a coach that loves to coach. And I think we've got that. And you want to talk about alignment of a team? GM, coach, star player, all in line. It's really nice to see the culture, the continuity, how they're building things. I thought that quote just spoke a lot to me, that like they have their guy.
And there was a couple things there that kind of build onto that. I had very similar feelings, Jacob. He mentioned, obviously Mark Dadon's coming off a Coach of the Year season. And he was saying, like, it's not so much what Coach Dadon and Mark and his coaching staff did this season as much as what they did at the very beginning of this quote unquote rebuild, where they put these principles in place that have stood the test of time and are still very applicable to this Thunder team as they enter into contention. trying to think what else. Oh, he mentioned, he used the same terms that Mark uses, stacking days, but he said it's not necessarily like stacking days, stacking weeks, stacking months. He mentioned like the Thunder's net rating, for example, getting better each month, but it's stacking seasons. And I think that's one thing that maybe some Thunder fans didn't like so much.
Galaxy brain.
He said it's only been an appearance so far. It's not an arrival yet.
Right. And those quotes are very related there. But I did like hearing him talking about like stacking the seasons as well. It's not about just completely flipping a team and trying to make the championship. It's about stacking seasons as well as those days that Mark talks so much about.
The man went to the hopium machine and turned it off. That's what happened.
Not completely, though. Not completely. And that's kind of what I took away from this press conference. He left a lot open to interpretation.
Yeah. He's dripping it into our bloodstreams instead of, like an aerosol format. All right.
JD, let's hit some supers before we get out of here.
Super chats. We got 2. First one, Alan McIntosh, our guy, says, I'm late to the pod. We still thank you for being here, Alan. But after listening to Presti, it seems like he wants to keep Giddey, which I'm fine with. Just think he needs to come off the bench. I think that's the scenario where I would be okay with Giddey staying also.
It's something that Giddey would have to agree to, and we'll see.
That's the thing. And then next one from Phantom TV or Fant XM TV. They say Tristan Da Silva is the most Thunder player in the draft. I would agree because of the last name.
I don't know if I would say he's the most, but he certainly fits a lot of the things that the Thunder look for. He's a great shooter from outside. He plays well in transition in regards to him being able to grab the ball off the defense rebounds, push the pace in transition. He can defend, but he's not super athletic. He certainly has some limitations, but all that being said, I think he would be a great role player for this team in a nutshell. And then Nick and I will get some guests on, and we'll dive more into some prospects this offseason.
Nice plug.
I think that's going to do it.
Yes, and I have to be careful here because I put the funeral music sound bed right next to our outro sound bed. So I could accidentally do this one day when we're doing the outro, and that would be bad. I would be ominous. So here's try playing them both at the same time there for a second. All right, here we go.
Love it. Hey, thank you guys for tuning in to the show tonight. If you want to donate, again, the Venmo is at the Uncontested. The PayPal is the uncontestedsports@gmail.com. We will collect money up to Sunday's show. Sunday's show. And then we are donating next week. So we hope that you will chip in. Make sure to go follow Yossi on Twitter and subscribe to his YouTube channel. He does great work. And you guys will want to see his breakdowns as transactions happen over the summer. We will be back with you guys Sunday. I believe Sunday we are starting a little mini series on the pod where we're going to look at some possible trade and sign candidates for this team that may fit. I believe Sunday is bigs. We're going to talk about adding a center to this team, which will be interesting. A week from today will be wings. And then a week and a half from today will be dream targets. So it should be a fun little series. Hope you guys will enjoy it and join us on that journey. Have a great rest of your week. We will see you Sunday. Until then, and as always, Thunder up.